Supplier relationship management for VF brand. So to introduce, we know that VF Corporation is a US-based company active in the design, production, supply, marketing, and distribution of designer clothing, including jeans, sportswear, and footwear. With more than 30 brands, VF is a giant in his field. So VF brand has developed a unique tactic because it is inescapable to have the best supply chain as possible with a horizontal integration of production where manufacturers and suppliers lack confidence among themselves. Production loses its effectiveness. That's why VF Brands hired Chris Fraser in 2000, and with Mike Green, they solved this problem. Suppliers play a vital role, but also especially gain in efficiency. That's the new idea they put forward, which is the third way, which means combining vertical and horizontal integration in order to reduce costs. In this report, we want to show the reasons why apparel companies practice outsourcing and why VF brands implemented it. We will also see how the third way relationships works. So now about the outsourcing decision of VF brands. The outsourcing is very present in the world of industry, especially in the apparel industry. Several reasons can push companies to outsource. Indeed, thanks to outsource, company can be more flexible. It means that it can adapt to evolution of its demand and its environment. This strategy permits the company to have several suppliers in different places. This helps them to optimize cost. The workforce, the production, and the raw materials costs depend on the supplier's location. Additionally, the logistic cost should be considered. For instance, if the company wishes to sell in Asia, it will be more efficient to produce there since the cost of transport will be cheaper than if it produces in another country. And then companies use the outsource since it is easier to be flexible and to respond on any environmental changes. With own manufacturing, the companies need to invest continuously in processes for being competitive. Whereas when the company uses outsourcing, it just needs to change the supplier to react on any change. In a certain way, it permits to save money. Outsourcing is the best way for companies to be more flexible. It means that it can adapt to evolution of its demand and its environment. So in 2004, the VF brand decided to make significant shift in strategy. It wants to change its strategy and its products of distribution. So they invested on new brands such as Kipling, Napa Prigi, Wrangler, and Lee Jeans, etc., etc. But the problem is that most of those brands did not have their own manufacturing. That's why it was complicated for them to produce products from the other brands. So the company had to outsource these new products. Also, with the development of the Project Growth Plan, VF has decided to expand its sales outside the US. But the problem was that all its plants were only in Mexico and the Caribbean. The localization was perfect when the company was selling in the US, but as it is saying in the text, with the strategy of expanding into lifestyle brands and international markets, the company needed to expand its outsourcing in Asia. VF used a mixture of internal manufacturing and outsourcing, relatively unique operations. Over the last few decades, the supply chain strategy in the garment sector has focused on finding low-cost solutions, so trying to find labor at a low cost, even hiring in another country. The strategy used by VF was therefore to move production with several suppliers in different locations to optimize costs and other factors. Many thought that this approach also provided strong incentives for suppliers to reduce costs in order to complete future contracts. The problem that has emerged with this procurement strategy has been the lack of coordination and trust between suppliers and clothing companies like VF. This resulted in an increase in inventories and long delays. But Fraser found a solution and said, "What I would like is that we create close relationships with suppliers as we do with our internal plants."
Now, third-way partnerships. The third-way partnership strategy has changed the way VF works. For example, the company VF has only 40 factories, while before it had hundreds. For the purchasing side, setting up a relatable network and a high-quality supplier network require a huge investment over time. Potential suppliers needed to be visited and their manufacturing capabilities carefully evaluated. In addition, VF now has a strict policy of doing business with suppliers who have established standards for worker safety and production. Third-way partnership strategy was to put in place contract called cut and make (CM). According to this approach, VF separates contracts for suppliers at every stage of production and manufacturing process: fabric, cutting, sewing, washing, finishing. VF owned the stocks and the suppliers were paid for the added value of the not particular. VF was also responsible for coordinating the flow of product from one supplier to the next. The advantage of this approach is that VF maintains a very close control over costs at each stage.
Okay, there is some reasons why why we have formed a collaborative partnership relationships. First, a part of production was a labor-intensive process lead to lack of scale advantages, and second, there were a large number of small garment manufacturers worldwide because it was not difficult to access into production, as well as the skills required to produce garments were relatively easy. And last, dynamic and complex tariffs and quotas dominated garment production. So we have to build supplier partnership with garment product producers scattered in low-cost countries around the world, and focus on the benefits they want to obtain from partnerships. Uh, okay, let's move to portfolio. We choose the quadratic portfolio. These 2 by 2 matrix represent 4 different buyer-supplier relationship types and suggest a set of specific sourcing strategies. First, non-critical items. These items are low risk and have a low impact upon organizational profitability, and leverage items have a high profitability but a low risk factor. Buyers own the balance of power in the relationship and utilize this strength to gain more. And talk about bottleneck items. In contrast to leverage, risk is high but profitability is low. The strength is in the hand of the supplier. And thus the strategic items, high supplier risk and high profit impact items cover strategic suppliers. These are critical to the business. So, to be specific, talking about heritage business, uh, because uniforms are in the bottleneck items, so VF should focus on using standardized products and monitoring orders at all times, and optimizing inventory levels to find substitutes and potential suppliers, and focus on lifestyle brands. VF should be integrated through its plants and factories, scaled all of the world.
So to conclude, using the usual method of outsourcing to reduce production costs is not the most efficient, as we have been able to demonstrate. Indeed, the production of clothing is one of the most saturated in the world. As a result, the majority of manufacturers locate in low-cost countries. VF Brands decided to base its outsourcing strategy obtaining labels which don't carry out their own production, expanding sales outside the United States and reducing logistic costs were also a reason. Now relationships are formed with 5 suppliers based on knowledge exchange, risk share and process improvement. Production is less expensive than the own manufacturing as well as more efficient than the traditional outsourcing. VF Brands is certainly on the right way with this strategy, not focusing on quantity but on quality of the relationship. Talking now about purchasing products, VF should use these resources to manage and develop the relationship with the suppliers that has demonstrated that they can provide good value. And to finish with, VF Brands is however more aware about the question of social situation of its workers in low-cost countries.